everything clicks on. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Democrat and Republican walk into a bar virtually today. I am your Democratic host, Cindy Vanier.
And I'm your Republican host, Christy.
All right, welcome. Yeah, so Christy and I were just chit-chatting here as we were getting things started, and I was seeing how I'm like the cookie mom for my daughter's troop, and I was like so immersed in calculating cookie sales that I almost forgot it was time for our podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta sell them cookies.
Cookie business. Yes. But limited time. So it's like ending in a couple of weeks. So.
Oh, there we go.
But then Christy was saying there's some new drama with the Guthrie abduction, huh?
Nancy Guthrie. Yeah. So it's just something that literally just popped up on my phone. And this is the headline: Savannah Guthrie dismisses Arizona sheriff from search for abducted mom Nancy as police still have zero leads. So Radar Online reported this. Obviously, they're not the most reliable source. However, they say that they can reveal that Savannah Guthrie has had enough of Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos and the job he's done with her missing mother's abduction case. So basically, she's alleging that he's bungled it quite a bit and that he was apprehensive about sharing the glove that they found to search in Quantico for DNA, that the FBI and stuff like that, and that there's a whole bunch of drama. But all I know right now is this case is wild to me. The fact that there are no leads whatsoever after 2 weeks. I mean, I used to be a big Forensic Files fan. And like even just like a single thread found had led to finding the person, finding the body, finding the killer. And it's so remarkable how evidence can be collected and how thorough these investigations can be, and the fact that they have made no progress whatsoever, and that there's still such an immense amount of confusion as to what happened. And I know for a fact that the sheriff, Nanos, is claiming that it could be as of tomorrow or in the next hour that we find out what happened, or it could be years. And I'm like, that's such a broad thing. The fact that it seems to me, and I understand it's a hard thing to do to collect this evidence, but it's very baffling to me that in such a modern world with so much surveillance everywhere, everyone's got a phone, lots of people have Ring cameras, lots of people have all sorts of, like, how on earth have they not found anything that can give any leads? I find it mind-boggling.
And something, didn't I see something about that there was a ransom note, and there was a bit of confusion around this as like whether or not there was a ransom note and the FBI had it, but the family didn't, and then the family got it, and the family's like, yeah, dude, we'll pay, give us our mom back. But it seems like if they have some kind of communication with the people, like there has to be some kind of lead. I don't know. I haven't been following it too closely, to be honest.
You would think. The issue is, I think, the validity of the ransom notes. They've actually received apparently like many ransom notes that have been debunked because people are cruel and they see this national news, so they start claiming that they have something to do with it to try to extort money. And that does happen. So my understanding is their apprehension in wanting to communicate and hand over any kind of money is because they have no validity. They can't be sure of what the, if this has been confirmed, if it's an actual ransom note, if she's still alive, if this person has anything to do with it, things like that.
Wild. Now, I will float. I'm going to just repeat a conspiracy theory that I've heard. Sure. I'm not supporting this. Let me just say that. Like, I have no idea.
We're just sharing what we hear. Yes.
And like, just kind of watching this, but some people have been linking this to the Epstein files because Savannah Guthrie, I guess, had done one of the first victim interviews back in 2019 or something along those lines. I don't know exactly what that has to do with anything, but there are some people that are like internet sleuthing, saying that this is some kind of pressure campaign on Savannah Guthrie in relation to Epstein.
You know what? I think that's, given the mysteriousness of this case, we can't say that we can't, you and I can't speak to anything. We don't know what's right, what's wrong, what's crazy, what's not. I do know for a fact, though, that basically everything is somehow now linked to the Epstein files or Israel. Like with how so many people with how people portray everything. I mean, like if I get an itch on my shoulder, I'm like, it's Epstein all of a sudden with all these conspiracy theories. So I'm not trying to make light of that because who knows, that could very well be But if that's the case, of all people, Savannah Guthrie,
It was like
no
Savannah
offense, but
Guthrie's
more
the key.
investigative journalist,
She's the
as opposed to a
key.
morning show.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
know that
like
this she was going to be the host of the Olympics, and they kind of she couldn't do that.
right,
Is
yeah.
it something related to the Olympics? I don't know.
I don't know, but
can't
that seems strange.
begin to understand what is going on with Savannah Guthrie or the Epstein files, for that matter. I'm just
Yes.
just watching the show.
Right. Well, Pam Bondi has confirmed that all of the files have been released, right? That's what she's claiming. That's what she said anyway.
Wait,
I'm just reporting.
She said that there weren't any, and then some other claims, I think, from DOJ were that there was like 3 million more. Who knows?
Right. So all I can say is what I know that she said. She had made some statement saying that everything had been released, but yeah, we shall see if anything more comes about.
Well, let's talk, since we're talking about Pam Bondi, let's talk about Pam Bondi's appearance in front of the congressional, was it the Judiciary Committee?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the committees this week. And what many have described as a very combative appearance there, with of course, there's a meme going around about it where they were asked about the victims, and she's like, "But the Dow was over 50,000." So anyway, I don't know what was your take on that spectacle.
So my issue with these hearings is the balance between I'm always in favor of full transparency, as you know. So I don't care if they're from my party, the opposite party. I don't care. What I want to see is full transparency. And these committee hearings tend to be very combative because it's more of a political spectacle, like a political spectacle, as opposed to actually trying to reveal evidence and get that in front of the public.
Yeah.
Because the people that are asking the questions are often grandstanding as well. And it's a little frustrating to see. And so the thing is, the fact that there have yet to be any revelations, again, that's my bigger issue. So her report is we've unleashed all the files, and we have several high profile people that are named in this list. And the issue is, again, so many people are named in the files at some point, including the Dalai Lama. Like it's one of those things of like, okay, but to what extent does this mean?
Right.
Just because their name appears now doesn't mean that something happened, because we know for a fact that Epstein was a social climber as well. He was a wealth climber, and having these connections, whether it was for the illicit things going on his island, or whether it was just him trying to associate with people and being shady in the business world, trying to continue to climb a ladder. So again, that's my bigger concern with the hearings, is we're still waiting on actual revelations. What does this mean? What does this evidence point to? And with all these files, and I know that he's dead now, so the truth is going to be very, very hard to truly extricate. But there's got to be some more investigation into this. With all these names being listed, the minimum that needs to happen is that everybody needs to be re-interviewed, have more discussions. What happened? Why are you being named here? What's going on? Like Bill Gates, for example. I read an article where Bill Gates was, I feel so sorry that I ever associated with him, blah, 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 blah. And he put on this whole, tried to make himself the victim, essentially. Yeah. That he got duped by this Epstein character. And I'm like, Epstein had already been convicted of a felonious crime, like, of something repulsive and disgusting, pedophilia. Associating with him and claiming, oh, I got duped by a pedophile is ridiculous. And the fact that he had any association with any of these people is disgusting to me. And I have no sympathy for somebody like Bill Gates, because what the heck are you doing now, just trying to cover your tracks instead of not associating in the first place?
Right. Well, and that's not the same quote that his ex-wife said, right? Melinda Gates was quoted as saying, wow, this brings up a very painful part of my marriage. Yeah, I bet it did, right?
I bet. Yeah.
And so, there's too much of it. It's really awful. And it's been a terrible episode. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why there were even these hearings this week. I guess it's just they're trying for accountability, I guess. So yeah, it was really just a public spectacle, and then the victims and but it's, I think what a lot of people looking at this are wondering to themselves, there's so much evidence of numerous different types of crimes. and over 1,000 victims and their statements and things like that. Why has there only been 1, 2 people held accountable for all of this? At the very least, right? It's like you have, child sexual assault videos and stuff like that. That's a crime. Abduction, extortion, all of these other things, even it's just, we haven't even seen all the other video evidence and stuff, right? Like, surely there's other stuff in here that people are culpable with, even if they didn't do some of the more, outlandish things that have been accused.
Right. Like, for example, his assistants. His assistants were very much privy to what was going on. He had staff around him that were very privy to what's going on. And I know for a fact that one particular assistant, even though she was very aware of what was going on, the extortion, the abuse, the sexual misconduct, she was aware, and she still hasn't been charged because I believe law enforcement said that she was also a victim. She was also being extorted by him and going through all this pressure, which I understand. I'm not trying to dismiss if she was a victim, but the issue is being a victim and then actively helping make other people a victim. There needs to be some accountability as well, or at least more transparency into what happened there. And that needs to go through the criminal justice system, in my opinion, because the fact that there are so many people that knew about this and we're just like, oh, he was a monster, he bullied us into it. I think that's just very, very silly to dismiss people's actions as they were just a victim and that's why they did it. And that's why, like we said, it looks like a spectacle to me, as opposed to really just getting more information out there. These hearings, in my opinion, are a waste of everyone's time unless it's going to have more revelations.
Yeah. And I think that's what's confusing and frustrating for a lot of people too, is like, so where do we go from here? So now we've seen all. Oh, made me think.
I couldn't hear that last bit. I still can't hear you.
Change my mic.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
Sorry.
All right, rewind a little bit. I missed something.
I said, now that we've seen all of this horrible shit, what happens next? Like, who's going to be held accountable? Somebody's going to jail, right? Like, there's going to be like, we've seen all this. It's very traumatic too. I don't know how many of you have actually gone through and seen some of these things, but it's haunting. It's haunting to see these horrible images of children being abused and exploited, and you don't even necessarily know all the circumstances around it, but these are very disturbing images that we're seeing. And I don't know, like, we've asked for this. We wanted the transparency, but I think we also wanted the accountability. We wanted and then we didn't just want to see it to be shocked by it. We wanted to see it because we wanted there to be accountability for it from everybody, right? And it seems as though there are other places around the world that are taking this seriously, and companies and things like that. And I know that there's been some, in Norway and Poland, there's been some action against various government officials and investigations. So that's going to add another interesting element into what's going on with these things, because they are not going to protect the same people that, various systems in the United States were protecting.
Right. And I exactly agree with you, because the thing is, we wanted transparency so there would be some action as a result. No one wants to hear about all these horrifying things. It's almost like the elites are laughing at us. It's like, yep, we're going to show you what we did now, and we let it happen, and nothing's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And that's what's like, and so it should be traumatic for everybody in the entire world to know that these powerful, wealthy, connected people. It's not like we all know that human beings can be heinous and horrible. Crimes happen every single day. Humanity has so many flaws, but the fact it's the powerful, rich, and connected, influential people that were all associated in some way to this kind of conduct. That's why all the conspiracies have come about. That's why people think that Nancy Guthrie, this might have something to do with Epstein, because for all we know, it's all connected. And that's the trauma behind it all, as Americans and as just a human being. in this world to know that not only are humans capable of this kind of harm, but it's the powerful ones that are doing it. And it's the ones that we've entrusted, and it's the ones that we are looking to for governance, and we are looking to for having big companies that employ people. It's awful. And the fact that, so I would like to see some arrests. I would like to see some investigations. And the only way I think that you get past this, the what now, is look, your name was filed. Like, he's claiming that, like, it appears that certain emails claimed that Bill Gates, this is according to what I read, that certain emails to Bill Gates of Bill Gates trying to get Epstein to get rid of some evidence, and Epstein was very offended, and he had given him some STD medication. Yeah, the STD medication that he was supposed to clandestinely slip to Melinda and things like that. I'm like, look, if you're claiming all of that is false and he was just trying to extort you, that will come up in court. But this is enough, in my opinion, to be like, no, we're going to at least go through some criminal proceedings, some sort of investigation, because you can't just say, he's lying, I didn't do anything. That's not good enough anymore. Yeah. You've associated with him. We all know what a criminal he was. You can't just claim he's lying. I want to see some evidence come out of this. And I want to, innocent until proven guilty, but there should be an investigation. That's what I'm talking about, is that there's so many little things that we've learned from these files that if there's any sort of possibility that somebody was involved, then we need to go through an investigation.
Yeah. So it's interesting about this too. And of course, the partisan side of it has always been what side is connected, right? And people have been saying, oh, Trump is connected. And then usually the retort back is, well, Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton both have said that they are willing to testify under oath publicly about these files, which I thought was really interesting. And just on a side note, God, does Bill Clinton look old as shit now? But God, he's yeah. Anyway,
side note.
He was like, is he going to even make it if they roll him up there? But yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting kind of thing because, geez, there's a lot of pictures of Bill Clinton there too, right? Doing all sorts of stuff that seem real shady. So I don't know. What's your take on the Clintons?
So my take on the Clintons is the fact that he perjured himself under oath, perjured himself in regards to sexual misconduct while in the presidential office. The distrust is already inherently there. I love the concept of we want to testify publicly. We want everything to be transparent. Sounds great on paper, but knowing the influence and the power that the Clintons have historically had, knowing that Hillary Clinton ignored subpoenas and was deleting emails, just claiming it's about her daughter. It's kind of like, I don't care. That's what your claim is. You were subpoenaed. They both have a history of being deceitful and distrustful in regards to these hearings and testimonies and whatnot. So it's kind of like, great concept. Love that, but I don't believe them. And the thing is, either one, I'll believe it when I see it, when they actually testify publicly. And secondly, even if they did, I'm skeptical of how honest they're actually going to be, because they've gotten away with it in the past. And then not so much. Sometimes they don't get away with it. And sometimes you get impeached for perjury. And so that's where, like, the Clintons having a history of crimes for something in its nature is dishonesty. That's why I'm like, yeah, okay. I'll wait till I actually see the hearing, them go under testimony, and really let's see if this is anything is actually true, because I don't buy it.
Okay, here's just my take on it. Well, first of all, let me just start like this. There obviously Republicans and Democrats have a very different feeling about their folks, right? There has never been the feeling about Hillary or Bill Clinton in the same way that a lot of people, especially the MAGA Republicans, feel about Donald Trump. It's a very different relationship. Now, there's a lot of people that really like them. Bill Clinton was cool in the 90s, right? Everybody thought he was a cool guy.
He was cool. People liked him. Likeable guy.
He was likable, right? But like since then, the political capital of both the Clintons has significantly diminished. I know behind the scenes they're still doing a lot of stuff, but especially after, Hillary Clinton, was defeated by Donald Trump in 2016, she's all but gone from like Democratic politics, like the party politics. And all. She's just way gone. And they rolled out Clinton for a speech at the Democratic National Convention in 2024. It was rough, though. I'm not gonna lie. I watched it. It was rough. It was rough. So I'm intrigued by the Clintons kind of taking this tack, knowing that there's probably a lot of stuff in there that makes them look really bad. But they may just be at the fuck it phase, really. Like they might just be at they have neither one of them's viable for office of any kind. They're really their influence in various spaces has dwindled significantly, and probably coming clean and kind of bringing everything out that they can with that is probably about the best thing they could do for the country.
Definitely what they could do for the country. The issue is, do they see it's the best thing they can do for themselves? And that's why we got to be realistic. And I would say the same thing. Look, I know this sounds harsh, but every single politician's selfish in some way. They do look out for themselves most importantly, and I'm including Trump in that. They look out for themselves first, and then maybe secondarily, maybe thirdly, maybe fourthly, maybe 10 places down the totem pole, they start to think about the people. It depends on which politician we're talking about here. Some are much more caring towards the people than others, but to your point, the effort phase that they're in, they're not public servants. They don't have to pretend to be public servants anymore. They will never get into office. They will not hold any political office again, unless they want to set their daughter up or something like that. But there's so much attached to the Clintons that I think that 2016 loss really did do a final blow in the Clintons' political capital. The only thing is, though, they still have wealth. They have independent wealth, and they still have influence with their colleagues. So then there's still that element. They are less powerful than they used to be. But again, there's still that element that I wonder if the egos are big enough that they think they're just going to keep getting away with things. And so, again, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so surely there's other news in this world aside from the Epstein files, which seems to take up a lot of the bandwidth. So is there anything particular that's happened recently, Florida, national politics, that's caught your attention?
Not coming to mind right now. I read all the time. I read all the time, but then I'm like, I don't know. My mind just went blank. I don't know what to talk about right now.
I did have one just in case you didn't have one ready, because this is something that there's actually parallel kind of bills going on in Washington, D.C. and Tallahassee. So there is an elections bill, HB 991, going through Tallahassee that very much mirrors the SAVE Act, which was voted on and passed through the House last week. Excuse me. And the Senate is going to take up here in the coming week, I believe. And it's not likely to pass the Senate, from what I understand, because there's some opposition to it. But both of them are very Republican-sponsored bills, very much oriented toward the election integrity kind of ideas. Opponents look at it and they see barriers to access and call it restrictions to votings and things like that. Some of the similarities, well, one of the main similarities between the two bills, HB 991 and the SAVE Act at the federal level, is this requirement for proof of citizenship for registration on voting.
Right.
And this has gone around, and there is an allegation, especially made by the right, where they are saying that the Democrats are bringing in people, immigrants and illegal aliens to vote. And so this is a big issue. But even the Heritage Foundation has shown that there's very, very small, minuscule amount of people who are actually illegal immigrants who are voting in elections at all. So very different timelines as well. So let me just talk a little bit about the Florida timeline for HB 991. HB 991, if it's passed, will go into effect on July 1st this year. The way that it's written will toss every voter in the state of Florida off their voter rolls and force them to re-register with their citizenship information citizenship information includes passport, birth certificate, and or naturalization certificate. The other rub that people have been talking about is with both the SAVE and HB 991 is that it has to, your name on your documentation has to match your citizenship. So for instance, if a woman is married and changed her name, her birth certificate is going to be different than her driver's license. And so there's an additional piece of information. And yeah, so that's, could potentially isolate up to 60 million women in the United States or make it more difficult for those women to vote. So those are some of the things I'm most concerned about HB 991, because obviously that's more likely to pass the Florida legislature, right?
Yeah.
And it's happening here, and the timeline. The timeline for me is the one, because if we throw everybody off the voter rolls on July 1 and we have an election
primaries
on the 15th, that's a huge problem. So I don't know if you want to weigh in on some of those.
Yeah. So I actually did have a long conversation with, it was Catalina Lauf's sister. We were talking about it on Thursday. I ran into her at BUPEC, and we were having a conversation about redistricting also being an issue and how long it's kind of getting pushed back. This issue with HB 991 being passed, if it does happen in July, because then you only have about a month and 18 days to make sure you go through this process, which could be quite burdensome to a lot of people, particularly if you're an out-of-towner. Let's say it's summer. Some people like to go and travel for a month or two. There's a variety of impediments. But I will say, on the other hand, you pointed out, even Heritage Foundation said only a small handful really of illegal immigrants are voting, which I get. But I get one vote. One. My one voice.
Over 20 years.
Wait, what?
It was like 17 over 20 years.
Okay, well, I'd still dissent to that, because the issue with 2020, and here's why: the issue with 2020 was a lot of the filings that we did and tried to bring to court, we were booted for procedural reasons, and we never got to substantively look into some of these voting dumps that would happen in the middle of the night. So I dissent to that, because if we never got to substantively look into it in the height of the voter integrity chaos that was happening after the presidential election, we are lacking in facts, because there was a lot of allegations and there were some evidence. I can tell you myself that I took some sworn testimonies when I was helping on the Nevada team. I took sworn statements from people claiming that they saw people double voting and that they personally witnessed it. Now, you could take that as it is, but it is sworn testimony that has to be taken seriously. And we never really got to battle that out in court. So the numbers it is what it is. But regardless, 17 people, 5 people, 1. I've got one vote. My vote matters. And it just got diluted by an illegal vote, even if it's just one. So the fact that we don't know entirely how many times this is happening, and how often it happens, to what severity, to what extent, and the fact that it dilutes an illegal vote because we only get one, I think that is something substantial that needs to be done. Now, that's the one thing, though, I'm in agreement that we should have been working on this a while ago, and it should be passing sooner and go into effect sooner, because the burden on so many people to try to race to get their voter cards ready in time for the primary is going to have a lot of effects on people. Mm-hmm. I mean, so like you said, some women who change their name, or just some people that are a little irresponsible and lose their documents, or they don't have time. They don't have time to go sit in the DMV and re-up your voter registration and things like that. That does cause a burden. And it is something that really, really needs to be considered. And if it's likely to pass, my hope is maybe there might be some safeguards to protect the people's legal right to vote. Because just as I pointed out, we don't want illegal votes diluting a legal vote. I don't want people legally voting to feel overly burdened to be able to vote. That is their right. That is their civic duty. So it's dicey. It's really, really dicey. I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on President Trump saying that he will, regardless of if the SAVE Act passes, he intends to ensure that there is a voter ID come November, come the elections?
Yeah, I don't know if that was in regards to some of his comments regarding the nationalization of voting. I don't know how he can do that. Let me just say first and foremost there. I don't know how we can do that, because one of the most interesting, yet cumbersome, yet purposeful parts of our system is that each state runs their own elections. Mm-hmm. And this actually is a really great way to stop different levels of intrusion and election interference, because you have, it's really difficult to infiltrate so many systems, right? Like each state does it their own way. And then this is states' rights kind of thing as well. So I don't know how you do something at the national level regarding elections of any kind without, passing laws or constitutional amendments in that way, right? So I'm a little bit worried about, executive overreach is something that I am not a fan of, and I will go on record saying I've been not a fan of it since Obama. Okay, so nobody can say, oh, no. There were, when Obama started saying, hey, let's just execute people from the sky way back when, that was like, hey, that is super executive overreach. And I didn't like it then. So I do love the checks and balances, of the separation of powers. These are things that I thought were really important, even though I understand that it's frustrating, right? A lot of people want to say, let's make our election system easier, and some kind of nationalization of that could very well do that, but it also makes it easier to co-opt. So I've come to appreciate some of the complexities of our system of voting.
Yeah. Well, so I wasn't sure exactly in what he meant or how he intended to do that. So I wasn't sure if you had any thoughts yet, because I read the article, but it seemed a little nebulous as to how he intended to make that happen, because I was like, there's a big constitutional issue there.
Right.
And so I wasn't sure how he intends to make that happen, or if it was just him, stumping. That's what politicians say, a lot of things,
I got
so you got to give them a little leeway.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a lot of plan behind it. It just felt like it was a thing to say.
Yeah, but the thing is the locality, and so I agree. It should be. We want to make sure that we have one. It makes it easier actually for people if it is nationalized. Let's just be honest. It would be a lot easier for people to have less confusion of what the voting laws are. If it's just something blanket for everybody. However, I tend to not be a big federalist type of person. And I do like to have states' rights, because if you are unhappy with certain laws in your state, move and go to a new one, something that works for you, something that you feel supported by. And and also it's not just checks and balances between the three government branches. It's a check and balance between state and federal too, that the state can have strong voting laws. And that's just how Florida does it, versus we're not going to have the federal government telling us how to run our elections. So it's a balance. It's weird, because I am very much, like I said, I am very much in favor of voter integrity and making sure that we are 1000% certain that there aren't fraudulent votes, that there aren't illegal votes that are infiltrating our system and diluting anybody's right to vote. But again, we also need to make sure that the people that are legally voting have the right to vote and have their right to be heard, and that we don't create an overly burdensome system that ends up silencing a lot of people in the process, even if it's for a short time. Even if the argument is, hey, yes, we know from July to maybe November it's going to be a little difficult, but it'll get there. It's kind of like, yeah, but people have a right to speak on their primaries. And we have a primary August 18th, which is very important for a lot of people, since we're going to have a new congressperson. We're going to have a new Congress member. So it matters to a lot of people to make sure that they are ready to go come the primaries.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people talk about this too, in terms of the electoral college debate, so, should we not have the electoral college? And then usually coming up with that is like a national general election, right? And how the states then administer those other elections. The other big issue that I see with HB 9, well, there's several issues, but another issue, let me just say this, is actually the cost, because our supervisors of elections, they just overhauled the voter registration system after last session, because they had to add in the driver's license and or social security number onto that. And then they had to update their systems to be able to have and hold that information in a secure way. And these are additional costs, by the way, so when you ask the government or government agencies to do things, you have to pay that. So you have to buy new software, you have to redo these certain things. So if you're asking for an uploaded document, that is a very secure piece of documentation, right? Because with your birth certificate, your passport, right? You have to have systems to be able to handle that. And interestingly enough, they've moved it in the HB 991, they asked the Department of Motor Vehicles to be the one to handle this. So, which is also like an interesting thing because it's supposed to be the supervisors of elections, which are local, right? So
and I did mention that a little earlier. I said nobody wants to have to go to the DMV for this.
Right. And then there is a matter of further constitutionality about barriers to voting. And so part of it says, okay, well, if you have to be issued a document, a license, not a license, but identification for free, because if they're going to require this, they can't make it so that you have to pay for it. That's a poll tax. But it some of these other pieces of documentation cost money anyway, right? So to get your birth certificate or get a new copy of that, or your passport or your social security information, right? So there's other barriers that are inherent into it. But I think the cost, I really do think that fiscal hawks should be very concerned about this type of thing in terms of how much it's going to really burden supervised elections and now another agency, right? In terms of how they're going to implement this. And I already know because I go to the supervised elections a lot because I turn in petitions and I'm always there talking to the staff. And the staff, I mean, it's a lot of hardworking people who are trying to make elections free and fair for us here. And it's a lot of extra work. And a lot of times they don't understand it because they feel like the systems that they had were pretty well checked, because the way that the system in Florida is now is that they're already verifying that versus, against various databases. You don't have to provide that information. And Florida had for a very long time been a leader in voter integrity, voter security, and vote by mail, especially because of the 2000 election.
Right.
Going in the way back.
those hanging, what's that called again?
Right. After all of that,
hanging like, Ryan, hanging something.
They're like, let's modernize our system. So I don't know. But yeah.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think it's dicey. It's very problematic. And the thing is, again, it's like that's the whole thing about legislation, though. It's balancing one interest against another. It's a very important factor that we need to have fair and free elections and make sure that we are only having legal votes get counted versus the overly burdensome steps to make that happen. And yes, it's going to cost money. It's going to cause safety issues because it's such private, personal information that we have to hand over, that's transferring from supervisor of elections to DMV has some factors. Yes, it's troublesome. And that's the thing is, the legislators, and that's the thing. So I haven't heard what their arguments are for those that speak in favor of it versus those who speak against it, and the nuances of the certain line items. But that's the thing is like to understand the logic behind their decision making, because it's so easy for them to get hung up on one issue of like, we have to make sure that our elections are safe. And then they forget all the other factors, or somebody opposing it saying, well, we don't want to overly burden people, but they're ignoring the fact that our elections might not be as safe as we think they are. And we haven't substantively gotten to fight that out in court yet. And I don't know if we ever will, but it's just things to consider.
Oh, sorry. So for people in the state of Florida, because a lot of people have been watching the national legislation, right? So if you're watching what's going on in Washington, D.C., take a look at what's going on in Tallahassee. Let me just say it like that. Because remember, everybody, they make the rules. Tallahassee makes the rules and the laws for the state of Florida. Okay. So those are the ones that we have to live by, right? The federal government stuff, it's important, but it's like, it's a whole nother thing, and it takes a while for things to get places. But if you are interested in finding more about this, you should definitely look it up. You should definitely make a call, talk to your state senator and state representative, and take a look at this bill and see how it may affect you here in the state of Florida and voting overall. I think that's what we should all do. It's really hard to follow along with what's going on. The session is so condensed. And there's also so much stuff going on in national, but I have seen a lot of people, especially on my side, right? My Democrats, they're like, oh my God, we're so worried about the SAVE Act. I'm like, you guys, look what's happening in Tallahassee. Before that bill or anything happens with the SAVE Act affects you, this bill in Tallahassee will affect you in a matter of months. So I'm just, that is like my whole pitch for everybody to like pay attention to the bills that are going through in the Florida legislative session, because that's what affects your life here on a daily basis.
Right. States are day to day, and federal is more big picture, long term. So this, yes, and because we are majority Republican here in Florida right now, we're still a red state. Wait, what?
I said in the legislature. No.
In the legislature, well, but so it is something that is more likely to pass. It will be affecting people in the matter of months. It will affect you for the midterm elections that are very important to people. And so also just a reminder of people in my party, don't get fooled by the headline. Read it, read the whole thing. And honestly, I should sit down and read every single line and really go over it. Just as we had this discussion, I was discussing it on Thursday with somebody else. Yeah. So it's, it's our duty to educate ourselves with what our legislators are doing, because we're going to be voting for them soon anyway, come November.
Yep.
And so you should know what they're legislating on, and don't just fall for the headline of, well, it's voter integrity. It's like, no, let me read the whole thing. Let me really make a decision for myself.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll advocate for that for everybody. Like you should yep. read what the bills say. And sometimes, listen, I get it. This bill was 500 pages. I was going to die because it was so like, blah, blah, blah. And so helping to have some synthesis and understanding of what's going on and some comparisons, especially when I was going through the budget, I'm like, I need some comparisons on this, like to understand what's being changed here. But, dive into the stuff too. Don't just necessarily rely on what somebody said about it or a meme or whatever, right? I do think that it's helpful if there are organizations that you trust, but still look into it, read their analysis, think about it, and then look for yourself. What is it? Was it check but verify? That was Reagan's
right.
Soviets. So
yeah. And also just a friendly reminder.
Trust but verify.
There we go. Trust but verify. And just a friendly reminder, we live in 2026, and that's actually a very ethical and responsible way to use AI. AI can actually summarize things for you. So if you say, take this 200 pages, I'm going to break it down for me as much as you can, so that way I can skim the actual piece of legislation, but then I get something a little bit more brief that I can wrap my head around. Maybe there's things that you don't understand, you're missing some concepts, and that's where AI really comes in handy. Now, AI is flawed. You should always corroborate and make sure it's accurate before you just trust whatever ChatGPT puts out. But that's something that we have the benefit of living in this time period, that we could have the most educated voters ever because we have these tools and make it a lot easier for us to understand what these pieces of legislation say. Otherwise, we just had to trust what the politicians would say on CNN or on Fox News or wherever they showed up and told you what to think. Now you can check for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's it. So one thing that's not going through apparently is property taxes. Have you been up to date on this one?
Yeah. So yeah, but go ahead. I'll let you leave on that one because I'm not the best with property law. I told you that.
No, this was something that the Republican-led legislature has been trying to pass for the past two sessions. Been a lot of excitement. There was a lot of excitement at the beginning in the committees during the beginning part of this session. There was like 25 different proposals at one point, and apparently the state Senate President Ben Albritton came out and said, "Hey, we're just not going to be able to come to an agreement on this right now." So it looks like another year will go by without that property tax reform. My take as a Democrat is okay. Like I wasn't really looking forward to a giant hole being blown into the state budget. And so I'm okay with that. I mean, everybody loves a tax break, but and then also it does feel to me like this is not a win. This is like it's taken an L for the Republicans who had promised us to folks, and they're not able to deliver. So it kind of feeds into our Democratic message of saying that Republicans are, like the hype, but maybe not as much on the governance side.
Well, and that's a flaw with every politician. It can happen to either party at any given time, where it's like they overpromise or promise to overdeliver, and it's not possible at that time. It happens. And unfortunately, you shouldn't make promises you can't keep, but that's what politicians do. And so unfortunately, they weren't able to come to an agreement. But yeah, like you said, it's not a win for Democrats either. It's more just like it's been tabled, and we're going to come back to it at some point. So
it's just okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, and then of course the redistricting is the special election. Now, here's just in the quick few minutes that we have here at the end. So there's been some Supreme Court cases that have given Democrats who chose Democratic states like California who chose to redistrict like some wins, and there was some losses. I think Texas had a court case related to theirs. I don't quite remember that, but basically this idea of redistricting, which a lot of folks did in response to Donald Trump saying, hey, let's get some more votes. Seems to be somewhat of a mixed bag across the country. Different. So blue states were doing it and the red states were doing it. And then now here's Florida. We're going to do it in April, which is kind of like way late compared to everything. Do you think that they're still going to go through with it, or maybe they'll just gavel in and gavel out?
I'm not sure. Again, I see, and it's always so hard to predict because unless you're actually sitting in the room where they're having these meetings, we never really know what's going to happen. And we can know
might be sitting in one of those rooms at any given moment.
we can know them personally. Like I know a lot of the state legislators personally, but unless I'm in the room with them, I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're actually going to make any progress on this. I will point out, just as I said, the HB 991 coming out July 1st and being a bit of a disadvantage for voters to have to go through very quickly to get their documents set up and be ready to vote come the primaries is one thing. I do have concerns about the redistricting happening in April, because for somebody that's living in, say, Mario Diaz-Balart's district right now, let's say you live in Golden Gate. For all we know, they expand 19 and shift 19 over a little bit, and now they are no longer represented by Mario. And now you've got less time than anybody to make a decision on these many, many, many candidates that are running for District 19. So it's a bit of a disadvantage for them to have to now turn around and educate yourself on your new candidates. And we need to make sure that people have sufficient notice and time to really consider and try to meet them, you know? And so I know, like, let's be honest, unless there's someone like you and me, a lot of people don't typically go out of their way to meet their representatives. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's a fun name, and they just circle that one. Or I think I saw that guy on TV, or I think I liked her on Facebook. I'll go with that one, you know? People don't take it as seriously as someone like you and me. But there are people that do, and they are bunch of nerds out there like us that really care and really want to know, and so they should be able to have a fair shot at like knowing what their district looks like, who might be their representative, and having enough time to make that choice.
Yeah, the other thing that concerns me about the timeline aspect of it is the fact that the qualification starts in May, and so like in order, and this is like a ballot thing in the state, so I mean this is also nerd central, but like so in order to get on the ballot you have to have petitions or money, and if they decide, it looks like they may have like 2 to 3 weeks essentially between when the, you know, and actually they could, you know, because I think it's 30 days for a special session, so it really could go all the way up to the wire if they wanted to. But if they were to redraw those lines, you're talking a matter of weeks that candidates, parties, and everybody has a chance, like to figure out where they're going to run or if they're going to switch or whatever, which will be a fascinating thing. But I have heard, I don't know, grumbles. I don't even know if it's like, you know, from a partisan perspective in particular, but there are some people who are starting to question whether or not this is a good strategy at this point in time. You know, and also, I mean, Florida's pretty well packed. Those Democratic districts are pretty packed at this point. So it's going to be tough to disseminate those Democrats into other districts. So it may end up actually diluting some of the other districts, and people are just, you know, there's some concern I've heard on it. So I was just wondering if there was any chitter chatter of anybody saying whether or not they're actually going to do it. So I guess we'll just see.
It remains to be seen. That's it.
That is like every day in Florida. We're just waiting to see what the next
the next adventure.
The next show. But yeah, that's after session, so it'll be after they do the whole thing, and then they'll come in. But we'll have to see. I mean, and again, we're the middle of February. Things have been changing so fast politically. Like the appetite for this may be totally gone by April. So who knows?
Yeah. And that's the thing is, if you feel like you have to rush, typically, if people are like in haste trying to get certain things passed and get certain things done. Sometimes you just need to be like, maybe we need to table this for another time because this is not the priority, because it's a little too chaotic. It results in a lot of chaos, and a lot of fighting and a lot of partisan combating. And sometimes, so I don't know. It's just, like I said, it remains to be seen though, because for all I know, some of the Republicans, they have a steady plan and they know exactly what they're going to do. And some of the Democrats feel the same way. You never know. And again, unless you're in those meetings and privy to everything, sometimes you won't know until it happens.
Right. All right. Well, let's close it there. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here. And so happy to have a wonderful conversation with my friend Christy. So this has been a Democrat and Republican Walk Into a Bar. I've been your Democratic host, Cindy Banier.
And I'm your Republican host, Christy.
Yes, thank you so much. So check out all of our shows here. You can even see back episodes of this on our website at bigmouthmediafl.com. If you'd like to get these episodes delivered to you, we would love to have you subscribe to help us keep this going. $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. You can find that on the plans and pricing page at Big Mouth Media at bigmouthmediafl.com. And if you're listening to us wherever you get your podcast, please like and subscribe and write a review. It helps us reach more listeners. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.